I hadn't meant to do an explanatory service today. I'm trying to minimize my comments so as not to break up the flow of the service too much. But it seemed to me perhaps relevant to what I want to speak about this evening, which is how do we relate to our prayers and liturgy in today's world? What do the words we've just recited and sung really mean to us? Do we believe that God commands us to light the Shabbat candles, that there are ministering angels who usher in Shabbat as we sang in Shalom Aleichem, that God orchestrates day and night, bringing on the darkness, setting the stars in their courses in the sky, that an eternal presence freed us from Egypt and teaches us the Torah and mitzvot, causing the wind to blow and rain to fall, supporting the falling and healing the sick, freeing the captive and keeping faith with those who sleep in the dust. These are the very words that are in our Siddur, in our prayer book, in our Erev Shabbat services, Shabbat morning, festival, all our daily cycle of services. They are ancient words, some, like the Psalms, nearly 3,000 years old, others found in the Mishnah or Talmud, nearly 2,000 years old. There are medieval poems and songs and prayers written specifically for our Siddur that date from the late 20th century. Translations have been tweaked and modernized over the centuries, and actually, as you might have noticed, some of the traditional blessings which Mel sang are slightly different from some of the versions that are in our prayer book. You may have noticed a discrepancy in two of the prayers. In the early years of our synagogue and of liberal Judaism, Rabbi Dr. Israel Matuk, the first rabbi of this synagogue, did away with the traditional structure of our Jewish liturgy, which I was trying to point out to you earlier. But of course, he included time-honored prayers such as the Shema and Aleinu in his prayer books. Rabbi John Rayner, the third senior rabbi of the LJS, brought back the traditional structure of introductory prayers, the Shema and its blessings, and the Amidah, or the Tefillah, in their correct order. That was in the first prayer book that he edited, Service of the Heart, in 1967. And in 1995, when Siddur Lev Chadash was published, it was the first prayer book worldwide that used gender-inclusive language to refer to humanity and to God in its English translation, a trend that many other editors of Siddurim were to follow in Europe, Israel, and America. But such modernization has not removed the difficulties of the actual words of prayers themselves and their author's conception of God. I am repeatedly asked, how can we say these blessings that thank God, whose will it is that goodness shall prevail, for being the rock of our ancestors, the power that shields us in every age? How can we utter words that affirm that God has the power to redeem, when all around us there is so much suffering in the world? When we witness terrible brutality and callousness to people who subscribe to inhumane and merciless ideologies? What kind of God allows 6 million of his people to be murdered, including 1.5 million children? If God is omnipotent, why is the world not formed nearer the desire of the human heart? Perhaps God is willing to prevent evil, but unable, or able to prevent evil, but unwilling. These are the questions that are raised as we study and pray the words of our Siddur. And they're raised too by the stories we read week after week in the Torah. Why did God continue to allow the Israelites to suffer as slaves in Egypt? Why not free them earlier than the 430 years they languished there? Why did God harden Pharaoh's heart to prevent the Israelites from leaving? The Mishnah answers these questions with this mysterious statement: Ein biadenu lo mish'alvat harashaim ve'af lo miyisorei hatzadikim. It does not lie within our power to explain either the prosperity of the wicked or the suffering of the righteous. This statement takes us into the realm of theodicy, the paradoxical question of God's all-encompassing power and our perception that God's power in the world is limited in some way. So to come back to the question of the words of our prayers, what can they possibly mean for us? This week, in our Tuesday morning conversations class, I brought some extracts from a new book called Communities of Meaning, Conversations on Modern Jewish Life, inspired by Rabbi Larry Hoffman. The book is structured around unpublished lectures and essays by Rabbi Hoffman, and longer essays by his colleagues and former students. Section 1 is entitled Worship as Drama. Here is how he sees synagogue services. The ritual drama of worship provides roles: shlichei tzibur, worship leaders; a Baal Koreh, a specialist who chants Torah; those called for an aliyah, to offer blessings before and after the reading; a darshan, the person giving the sermon; even the congregation itself, which functions like a Greek chorus. There is also the silent participant off stage, whom we call God. The drama has costumes, a talit, say. It calls for action too, the hakafot, processions, with people kissing the Torah. Not in this synagogue, I'm afraid. Or shaking the lulav and etrog, which are sacred props, along with such things as the Torah scroll and a yad, the little hand for reading it. Hoffman describes the Siddur as a script for the age-old drama of Jewish identity and the diary of the Jewish people, the book in which Jews through the ages have recorded their experience, not just the diary of the past, but our diary too. The new music and prayers that we add are our own diary entries that the next generation will inherit. If we are not to throw our Siddurim out with the bathwater, if we value something of its wisdom and insights, the poetry and aspirations of those who composed our prayers, then we have to read the words of our Siddurim not with a literal approach, but with something that transcends the characters on each page. Because when we come into the sanctuary on a Shabbat morning or evening, when we participate online, so much more is taking place. The physical environment of the sanctuary in which we find ourselves, the music, the community around us, the temporal space of Shabbat. And we bring ourselves as well to the experience of worship with our memories, celebration, sadness, loss, yearning, gratitude, and whatever it is that affects us in the previous week, in the past months or years. Worship is art. It is the structure and framework that allows us to sculpt our own experience during this brief hour and to emerge in some way, perhaps changed or healed. I have often said that everything that comes together in this service serves as a way of integrating the fragments of our lives. The broken parts of ourselves are held together in this orchestration of music and words, space and time, in our silence, and in the connections we make as a community with each other. That is what gives meaning to the act of prayer. That is what infuses these moments with holiness and truth.